Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Shed the Shame podcast. I am your co-host, Alice Kobel-Frakes, the founder and CEO of the Agenda Period app, along with Algelin, the CEO and founder of Ladybox. And today we are going to be joined by Murielle. She is a certified teacher, healer, and professional life activation practitioner. Her passion is helping others have more joy, and she does this by assisting people in letting go of what no longer serves them and moving them into their true selves, empowering them to live joyful, fulfilling, and prosperous lives. And she's got a really powerful story to share with us all today. A trigger warning off the top here. We're going to go into some pretty intense topics around relationships and some abuse. We'll put a little bit more of that in the show notes, but I just wanted to kind of put that framing in there for you all. But she's going to go into that more herself in a little bit here. So first, we're going to start off with our cycle check-in, all about normalizing the cycle and our hormones. So Murielle, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm curious, do you know where you're checking in with your cycle?
I am so excited to be here. And yes, I do. So first of all, I love to call my cycle my moon cycle because there's so many correspondences between our cycles and the moon. So when I'm on my period, I'm like, it's like the new moon, start of the month, time to let go. Ovulations, like the full moon, time to set intentions, bring things in. And I love that. Right now, I would be in the waxing portion, so like follicular, and not quite at ovulation yet.
She is a real expert, y'all. She's just gonna bring in so many good components and blowing me away right off the top. OMG.
That was awesome. You may have been the first one, the first guest
Johnny on the spot with it.
To understand the different phases and their names, and then having it coincide with the moon phases. I love that.
Well, that's what got me really into it. It was like I had a friend who was like, I always call it my moon cycle. And then I was like, oh, that makes so much sense because it's monthly and it has the same sort of parallels. And then that just got me so into it. And there's so many correspondences. I love it.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's really, really fun. And there's a ton of great information out there. So this can be a fun way to dip a toe in and attune to the moon. So we could definitely do a whole episode just about that. Let us know if you guys are interested in a podcast episode about that.
Actually, we have a guest.
That's right. Yes, she's coming in about the moon. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
awesome.
You have to make sure. We'll have to make sure to send that link to you, Murielle, if you're interested. But she's Hawaiian, and so she studies the moon and has this whole app and practice behind it, and understands the menstrual cycle and how it can coincide. So anyway,
awesome. Algelin, how are you checking in today?
I am full of full moon energy. So the thing is, if you're a first-time listener, I have an IUD, and sometimes I can pinpoint where I would be at, but lately it's just been I don't know, but I have a lot of full moon energy. Definitely was feeling it yesterday, and it's carried over into that today. I'm working off of 4 hours of sleep, but I am jazzed, full of energy. So that's where I'm at. So I could be maybe in my ovulation phase, but I have an IUD, so I don't know, and I'm okay with that.
I am full tilt ovulation energy today, mama. Just like match with the moon. I am just like, wah! So I am definitely all the way there. All of the cervical mucus, all of the energy, all of the intensity. So that's just the realness that I'm bringing to this podcast today. So it's a lot. Algin, if you're listening to this and not think, she'll give me a nod if I need to pump the brakes or something. She'll give me a look or a hand signal. So she'll be the wrangler today on this podcast.
I love your ovulation energy, lady. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we've had our cycle check-in, and I'm curious, Murielle, now we know that you're in tune with the phase of your menstrual cycle and your moon cycle. What has your relationship been like with your period throughout your life?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So when I was younger, I was on birth control, and I was on oral birth control, and really impacted my hormones, and it wasn't as something that I really had a relationship with, because it was very kind of mechanical, and it was just like once a month, take the pill, and it didn't really change or adjust based on what was going on in my life, because the hormones were just from the pill were overriding it. When I was, oh goodness, like maybe 20, I decided to go off of oral birth control, and I found I had such a better relationship with my cycle, because it would change and fluctuate depending on what was going on in my life. And it gave me this opportunity to really connect with myself on such a deeper level, and find this power and beauty in my femininity with that.
I deeply resonate with that. I, had ingested a lot of the cultural myths around women being so unpredictable and wild and crazy, and had gone on birth control at a very early age. I think I was around 16 or 17. And then I stayed on it for almost a decade. And then I was just finding a lot of intense anxiety, and actually I found so much more predictability, honestly, coming off of birth control once I learned how to work with my flow and my fluctuation. So thank you for saying that so beautifully. We here on the Shed the Shame podcast are all about dismantling these barriers within ourselves that are constructed, and then both through our experiences. And I know you've got something really potent to share with us today. So I would love for you to jump in and share your story, and share how you have come through the other side, shedding the shame, with however you want to take that.
Yeah, I appreciate that introduction and segue. So, as I mentioned to both of you, and for the listeners, I was in two abusive relationships, both roughly almost a year long each, and they were emotionally abusive and sexually abusive. And I was raped, honestly, more times than I can count, probably like 40 or 50 times. And the thing is that after I'd been through this, I started to have PTSD once it clicked in my brain what had happened to me. At first, I had been shut down and was so closed off. Like, my brain was protecting me, honestly. It was like, you cannot even recognize what happened to me, until I was in a safe place. And then when I recognized it, then my brain was like, oh my God, you're in fight and flight all the time. It felt like I was in, like, my life was in danger all the time, and I could barely function. And from that place, I was like, how did I let this happen to me? Like, why did they do this to me? I was so angry, so angry and hurt and in pain. And I, in I was in some many ways, I was like, I'm the victim of what happened to me. And there was a lot of shame around the fact that it did happen to me. And then something started to switch. I started to really recognize that, okay, what they did was wrong. There's no question about that. Like, there's nothing okay with violating somebody like that. But at the same time, there were pieces of me that, like, I had patterns that set me up to be in those abusive relationships. There were parts of me that were wanting somebody to honestly, like, kind of control me and tell me what to do, because I had such low self-esteem. I didn't believe I had it in me to make the right choices and make the best choices for myself. So I was seeking out partners who would make choices for me. And once I started to recognize and realize the pieces that I had that contributed to that, then I was starting to be like, oh my God, I can actually start to see these pieces, take ownership, and start to heal those and change those, so that that never happens to me again. And so that started me out on a spiritual journey. I've done lots of healings because, oh my goodness, like, some of the energy healings, it just makes it so much easier to resolve things, because we are mind, body, spirit. And I can think about things and process things all day long, but unless I have that energetic support, I'm still in the coping mechanisms and not in the actual healing and resolving mechanisms. So I was able to heal and move past so many things. And now I'm just like, yeah, I was in two abusive relationships. It is what it is. And I know why I have patterns that set me up to be in that. And I also know my boundaries are so much healthier now. And I'm in a healthy, loving relationship. And I'm so happy and so joyful. And I know that I will never let something like that happen to me again. And if I'm violating some other way, some down the line, I know I have the boundaries and I can heal. And it's just no shame about it. Like if somebody does something wrong to me, it has way more to do with them now. And if I, for whatever reason, set myself up to be in some other situation that isn't so great in the future, I know that I have the tools to learn from that and from the pieces that I can, right? There's always little bits of me, little bits of the other person, but that was so helpful. Like there was just so much shame in not taking responsibility, because then it was like I felt even more at fault when I didn't take responsibility in a interesting way.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about taking the responsibility? I mean, I have a sense of what you're talking about because I went through something traumatic over the summer, and I've had to, a way to put it, like I was in this dark hole and I've had to gradually climb out of it to get back into the light. But can you share more about and part of it was taking ownership and responsibility of what I can. But can you elaborate more on what you had to do and how you were able to get there and what that means to you?
Yeah, great question. So there were two different parts of that. So there was the piece of, okay, what my exes did to me, that sucked, but I'm here now, so I can take responsibility for how I'm reacting or not reacting to situations now. So I learned a bunch of grounding mechanisms. I started to meditate. I learned breathing techniques to really help bring me to the present and keep me here, versus letting myself be a victim of the PTSD that was then like, oh my goodness, this person did this. It reminded me of that time when this happened with my ex, and now suddenly I'm in the past and feel like my life is in danger and I can't function and I need to go binge watch Netflix for 5 hours because I can't even think and I'm too scared to do anything else. And so there was that piece. I was like in the moment, like taking responsibility for how I'm reacting or not reacting to my environment, when there's no reason to be afraid, trying to train my body not to be afraid. And then there was also like the underlying, okay, let me take responsibility for the parts of myself that led me to be in these abusive relationships. So like I had like no self-love at all. I felt like I had to be perfect, and I didn't know what perfect was. Perfect came from outside of me. Perfect came from what other people said I should do and be. And I basically had to take responsibility for that and be like, no, I do not want to live the life that other people say I should do. I do not want to look externally for what I should do. I trust myself. I had to build that trust with myself. And that took so much really hard but really great and rewarding work. It took looking at myself, going internal. What do I want? Who am I? Who is Murielle? Who is this woman who has been like running around for my entire life trying to get love and make other people happy, but what's it that makes me happy? What fills my cup? So I had to really own that. By not having self-love, by looking outside of myself, among many other patterns and other codependent ways of being, I had to be like, I'm not going to choose that anymore. I'm going to change. It's going to be challenging because change always is. There are ways to do that, and of course I've loved to share. I always love to share what has worked for me if somebody else is going through a similar process, because I know that this process works. The tools I've used work, but it really comes down to if you do the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. I was in 2 abusive relationships because I still had that pattern. And it wasn't until I chose to break that pattern and to shift and to change myself, then I started to attract partners that were different and attract people that were healthier because I was healthier. And it just made a world of a difference.
Wow, that is, I just like have so many thoughts coming up right now. I know it's a really intense topic because I think in some ways we're socialized to put a lot of responsibility on the other person, and there is clearly shared responsibility. Like they have their part that they are 100% responsible for, but it's interesting hearing you frame it like that and just see all of us have different kinds of trauma. Some of us have more kinds of trauma laid at our doorstep, and that is not okay. But how we choose to now what? And I think really claiming that responsibility of okay, how do I move forward from here is really hard to do. And so thank you for sharing that example with us. But there's kind of those options. Do we get stuck here? Do we keep living here? Or are we going to, slowly do that healing work, which is, again, not easy. It takes a lot of privilege to even be able to have the space to do that. But just thank you for talking about that. And I would love to get into some of your tools later on and tips and tricks. I think that would be fantastic. And I'm curious because you haven't connected these dots, but I want to follow a thread and see if it goes anywhere. But with any of that menstrual cycle awareness and tapping into your cycle, did any of that help you understand what are the things that I want? What are the things that I need at a certain time? Were there any of those connections of kind of dropping into your body and understanding the flow that helped in that healing process?
Yeah, great question. So after the abusive relationships and when I had PTSD, I then started to have really have this kind of spiritual awakening where I was diving into spirituality and healing through that. And I think about a year into that, I decided to get off of the birth control pill. And with that, I was really shared the piece of knowledge that I could use my period to release things energetically. So I could set the intention okay, I am having this come up, I can release it with my period, things that happened in the last month. And so every month when I got my period, I was like, okay, I'm going to set this intention for this is what I want to release. And then on the other side, when you're ovulating, kind of the full moon, that's the time to set intentions for what you want. So it was this really beautiful way of each month releasing, then setting intentions for what I want. And, trauma is layers, especially for trauma that's sustained over time. And like you were saying, everybody experiences trauma, but it can come in so many different shapes, sizes, colors. It could be a car accident, it could be a breakup, it could be a failed test. There's so many things that can be traumatizing. And I define trauma as an event that has a lasting impact on you. And that could be an event that occurs way over time. So there's many layers to it. And so I love the cycle of, menstruation because it was just something that each month I could kind of help peel a layer or support me with that layer.
Speaking of setting intentions, I love that. I love, using your period to release, because you're literally releasing and shedding.
Exactly.
And then the ovulation of harnessing the power. And so harnessing and setting intention for what you want. I love that, bringing things in. So with that, I'm so curious if you have a grounding affirmation or statement that you use to help you on those. When you're maybe even if you get triggered or if you are experiencing a different kind of trauma, what's a good grounding statement or affirmation that has helped carry you through that?
My favorite one is feel the fear and do it anyways. And also my second favorite one is fear stands for false expectations appearing real. So you can have fear come up, and it can be entirely based off of, the past experiences, the past trauma, and believing that that's going to occur in the future, because that's usually when fear comes up, right? You have some situation that reminds you of a past one and you get afraid that it's going to be like what happened in the past. But just remembering that fear, it's a false expectation appearing real. You do not know that's going to be the same, and in all likelihood it will be different.
I love that. Well, I want to like keep having like a real girlfriend conversation with you, but like I know that we have like a limited time, but what is like I love your fear statements, but if there is like a message that you could share with anybody that is going through something similar as you, or has also gone through something, the same thing that you've gone through, what's one message that you want to share with them? And then how can people learn more about you and where can they follow you?
Yeah. So my message to you is it all comes back to love. Loving yourself, knowing yourself, being honest with yourself. It is okay to be honest with yourself, and with all aspects, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and to love yourself, all aspects. That's really how healing is done. And if you're going through something similar, any sort of trauma, any sort of healing you want to do, if you're more interested in how to work with energy and moon cycles, whatever, if anything I've said has resonated, please reach out to me. You can find me at Hineni .center. So that's HINENI.center. And I'm also on Facebook at Healing with Murielle. So those are a couple different avenues that people can reach me at. And I'd love to connect with you.
Thank you so much, Murielle. And how do we say your last name?
Tugendhaft.
Tugendhaft. Thank you, Murielle Tugendhaft. If you're not watching this on YouTube, maybe you want to, because I wish that you could see this like glow that Murielle has, and like just how kind and heart forward she seems. So I hope you all get an opportunity to connect with her. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast and sharing your story with us. If you are compelled to share your story, folks, please email us at podcast@shedtheshame.co. And to learn more about the podcast and the campaign that we're doing in support of WaterAid and the work that they do, please visit shedtheshame.co, the website. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and keep it real and messy, just like periods.